Hey, welcome to episode 216 of Awkwardly Awesome Podcast. I'm your host, Jason Freeman. I started off doing this podcast some years ago, and I had a speech impediment. And on episode 216, you know what? I still have a speech impediment. Some things in life we learn to dance with, and it becomes an exciting dance. Speaking of dancing, work's a big thing in many of our lives. And have you ever either been an employee and gotten frustrated with the workplace culture, or been a leader and been pulling your hair out because the workplace culture wasn't what you wanted and you didn't know how to change it? If you fall into either of those two camps, which I would guess is just about everyone who works, this episode is for you. More on my amazing guest today in a second, but first this.
Today's guest, Tamien Dysart.
Back to Awkwardly Awesome Podcast. You know, I am forever fascinated with people who, after traveling one path in life, decide one day, this is not what I want to do with the rest of my life, and change course. Tamien Dysart is such a person. After spending over 16 years working in the financial industry, and he was very successful, as he'll talk about, but he decided that the Cubicle didn't suit him anymore. He's now the co-founder and CEO of Think 3D Solutions, a sought after, and he is a sought after coach, consultant, and speaker. Think 3D Solutions is a company founded on the belief that they can help people improve their lives by guiding them to change the way they work. Think 3D promotes change in the workplace by empowering teams to create healthy cultures that emphasize three dimensions: personal, professional, and potential. Please welcome to Awkwardly Awesome Podcast, Tamien.
Thank you, Jason.
Hey, thanks for being here, Tamien. So the guy I work with pronounced your last name right, but please, for the record, how do you say your last name?
Like a pair of dice, heart, dice heart.
Dysart. Nice. So I love thinking about my guest's childhood at the beginning, because I mean, we live and accomplish and get to be an adult, and it's easy to sometimes think that always is not important, but it's really interesting. So who are the first three people who come to mind who challenged you to be your best when you were a kid?
That's a really good question. Don't often get asked that question. I think in certain ways, I would say I learned probably more from, I would say, opportunities in my life than, mentors. I never really had a mentor, never had that. This coach changed my life. I would say the first moment that comes to mind was my former friends, I'll put it that way, when I was in the 7th grade. So I was in the 7th grade, had gotten a fight with one of my best friends, and overnight, all of my other friends turned their back on me. So I found myself 7th, 8th grade, really growing into an introvert. I was an extroverted person kind of up until that point, but that would really change my life in terms of a trajectory of personality. I like what you said. Oftentimes we as adults, we like to sit in, this is just who I am, when the reality is, no, that's who you were influenced or exposed to become. And so that was I'll call it my collective group of friends. The biggest change in my life, really growing up, I'll put it at 17 years old.
First of all, let's stick with that moment for a sec. That moment also taught you, I suppose, how quickly life can change.
For sure. Well, and then, too, as whatever age that is, 11, 12 years old, 13, such formative years. But even in society as adults, right, we only can make sense of the world based off of what we've been exposed to. And so when people often say, I don't understand how XYZ, insert the scenario, how people think, the reality is, do you care to know? Have you got curious? Because even that person that you may work next to all day long, who's negative every single day, you got to ask yourself, like, who chooses negative every single day? Well, if you ask them the question and say, what was it like in your upbringing, right? There's exposure, and it really does give you perspective of life can shift in a moment, and you don't always know how or when. But it's like that movie, Butterfly Effect, right? You go back and change one key time, and you're living a completely different existence. And so, though often we get great call out there, is so many people assign that looking backward and understand that looking backwards, but then we don't take care and concern for the moment. The moment's what we're doing right now. Those who's listening to this right now, the things going on in your life right now will change your trajectory 5, 10, 15, 20 years from today as well.
It's such a good point. It's easy to just go through the laundry list of what didn't go right in the past, instead of saying, oh, like, what did I learn from it? How is this inspiring me to move forward?
Yeah. So that's to that point, that which was a negative. What's interesting about that, Jason, is in a lot of the trainings that we do, I often ask the question to folks, magic wand in the middle of your table. If you could wave this wand and every bad thing you've ever gone through goes away, would you wave it? I have yet to meet one person that would say yes. Like, so go back to that moment of 7th grade. Here I was, and even recently, I've gone back and I'm like, man, think of the trauma that I faced every day at lunchtime, right? If all of a sudden your friends turn your back on you, and every day going into the lunchroom, this isn't back when you had open lunch and you could just escape going somewhere else. You had to face that lunchroom alone when people were talking about you. And I think about the level of trauma every single day, feeling isolated, so on and so forth, and what that did deep in my psychology. But if you would have changed that incident, I'm not sitting here having a conversation with you today, because my path would have been completely different. I would have had a different group of friends, all the different circumstances, of which, kind of continuing that, but next person I would put on that who had a major influence on my life, I wouldn't have been a teenage father, most likely, odds are, right? So I had my oldest daughter at 17 years old, and that was one of the greatest gifts ever given to me, because at that period in my life, not knowing who I was, kind of being directionless, I was a knucklehead in a lot of degrees. Well, now I have this responsibility of this life form, this beautiful baby girl, and she was such an influence I had to be responsible. I had to take ownership over my actions in various sense like that. And that moment, that beautiful young soul, who my oldest is now 27, she absolutely changed the trajectory of my life. And so that was a big moment for me.
What would you say to the people who might be listening who are expecting teenage dads who are going, oh, I don't know if I can do this?
Really, something I've learned, obviously wisdom, you can't give people wisdom. You only can give them knowledge, and knowledge isn't power. It's applied knowledge that's power, but then it's only experienced knowledge that turns into wisdom. So if I could pass on some knowledge, which is my wisdom that I've learned in that, is I've understood and still understand that, most individuals, when you talk about accomplishing big goals or big dreams or whatever the case is, some people can't see past tomorrow. And I always tell folks, I heard it from Zig Ziglar. I don't know if he originated it, but he had said, just go as far as your eye can see, like that, as far as the horizon looks for you, which may be tomorrow, maybe next week. It may be, let's say you're expecting that baby in 4 months or whatever the case is. If you only could see 4 months, whatever that sprint is, lock in on that. And then that's your focus. Go after that, run to the top of that hill. The 100% money back guarantee is when you get to the top of that hill, you'll be able to see another distance in the horizon because you're never there. And so I always tell folks, even in my life today, who folks ask me, how do I do so much with the community work I do and volunteering and building multiple businesses and all those different things? I've learned to shrink my world down to what I can control and what I can influence.
You've learned to shrink your world down to what you can control and what you can influence.
Yep.
Please, we're going to get to the third thing. I'm putting it off as long as possible, but please say more about shrinking your world down to what you have agency over.
Yeah. So the greatest currency we have is attention, right? It's what we get. Marketers, again, these things and all the things that they want your attention. And I had a gentleman one time, I was talking to him and said, you have to be careful what you pay attention to. And that analogy stuck for me in my head. What are you paying attention? Because what you pay attention to comes true in your life, that what you think you are. And so when I shrink my world down to what I can control and what I can influence, most of the world is so caught up in things that rightfully so, we should be concerned about. Like, am I concerned with what's happening between Russia and Ukraine? 100%. There could be some implications to that. So I'm aware, but that concern, like, what can I do to control or influence it? Next to nothing. This last election, man, people were caught up in the divisiveness and all the various things. Am I concerned who sits in the White House? Of course. Well, how much control and influence do I have? 1 vote. And so in that, I don't allow myself, we all have I would say time is the great equalizer and it's also the great separator. I don't care if you're Elon Musk, Oprah Winfrey, Jeff Bezos, they all get the same 24 hours in every single day that you and I get. So I don't care who you are, we all get 24 hours in a day. Great equalizer. But it's the great separator by what you do with that time. So time is free to a degree, but it's not. It's our most valuable resource. How you choose to spend your time, spending your time will determine how valuable you and how valuable your life will become. And so when I shrink my world down to what I can control, if I have no control or no influence over it, why would I, to a large degree, waste my energy, waste my attention, waste my currency on things that I'm not out here taking a crapshoot. I'm not trying to play a video lottery with my life where I'm just putting dollars in and hoping I hit the jackpot. What I can control every single day, my energy, my attitude, my effort, my mindset, that's what I have 100% control over every single day. Then I look at that next bucket. What can I influence every single day? And that's the world around me. That's the people I engage with, right? We teach leadership. Real leadership is influence, right? We describe the same definition that John Maxwell, the guru in this space, talks about. Leadership is influence. And so through my energy, my attitude, my efforts, if I can positively influence the world around me, that's going to surround me with better, like-minded individuals. It's going to move forward the things that I care about, helping organizations, helping our community move forward. In that bucket that most of society spends so much time gossiping about, talking about, never accomplishing anything, I learned to shrink my world down to what I can control, what I can influence. Therefore, I'm using my energetic attention currency to put a down deposit on the future that I want to see.
How do you differentiate between what you can control and what you can influence?
So I mean, again, they're cousins. I would call it that way. They're closely related, and in that space, most of the control stuff is absolutely 100% to zero. Can I do something about this? If the answer is yes, then I'm putting it in my planner. I'm doing something, and I'm controlling my energy, my effort. Influence. There's an intangible movement in that right now. For instance, the work that we do around our Leaders of Tomorrow program for the justice impacted. Right, we're now in the prisons and those type of things. I can't control the outcome of getting funding or doing various things, but I can influence. And so I'm having meetings, I'm moving things forward of those type of things, obviously doing the program itself. And so garnering more support behind some of the efforts that we're taking, whether that's within an organization, whether that's community work, whether that's in my own family, whatever that is I want to influence the world around me. So control really is within 100% to zero. Do I have control over what I can do? And so I'm a big planner person. So again, I write down what I can control. Those are my action steps. And along the way, I'm going to be also be strategic about influencing the world around me.
How did you and your team come to have such a such excitement about working with people who maybe didn't have so many opportunities early on and trying to narrow that gap so they have more opportunities to succeed and to shine?
I think for me, it starts with, I was that kid. I was the othered, if you would. I mean, and growing up, just off the top, I was in the school system here in Sioux Falls. When I was going through high school, we had 5% diversity. So I spent my whole life feeling othered, feeling like I didn't have a path, in my family. I didn't have examples of what success looked like. I didn't have, in our community, I didn't have people of color that I saw and I could emulate or aspire to be like. I didn't have those role models, if you would. So just inherently in me, I have a drive and a passion to help. Everyone deserves a chance. Kind of my just personal mantra on that. Like, everyone deserves a shot. I don't care who you are, what you're doing. Again, even as you're talking about your intro, flowers to you, man. This is amazing to say. I'm going to take what I have and do something with it, right? Because there's so much of our society is in that bucket of feeling like we're not enough or have nots. And that's where that passion really comes from. And truly, when Vonnie and I started to Think 3D back in 2016, we asked really three important questions. Number one, is there a need in the marketplace? We knew there was. Culture was this big buzzword. Two, were we good at it? We both had the evidence and our corporate experience that we were really good at building high intentional cultures. But the most important was, is it fulfilling? Because I had a six-figure salary where I was at. I was making really good money, but it wasn't making an impact at the level that I wanted to have. And you kind of shared our belief statement when you were doing the intro, that we believe we can better the world by improving the way people live through improving the way people work. And in that, the way we've done work historically, I say this statement very boldly, is that you cannot and you will not be able to live your best life possible independent of an ideal workplace culture. Ideal is not perfect. Ideal is about progress. And you start to ask the questions, how are all interconnected, is what happens in a community where workplace cultures are less than desirable. So then people are going home with less. Then they're giving their kids less attention. Now kids are turning to social media and they're turning to all these other things. And then that next generation doesn't have the care and compassion as the previous generation. Now some of these needs go unmet. And so you start to say, like, that's the fracturing of community, which is a fracturing of our country and a fracturing of the world. And so we see such a huge gap, and there's so much pain and so much hurt. And so why we get up every single day to do this work, whether that's community facing directly or indirectly by way of working with organizations, it's giving people a pathway to be able to live their best life. If people are on that path and seeing how it connects with each other, like, that's the kind of world I want to live in. So be the change that you want to see in the world is the kind of core of that answer.
So you and Bonnie saw some huge gaps, and you decided to do something about it. Yeah, lots of people see big gaps and then just say, "Oh, I would like for that to change, but I can't really do anything about it." What do you think helped you and Bonnie choose to say yes? Yes, this is important. Yes, this is what we want to put our energy towards.
For me, I'll tell you quick, I'm haunted by this certain memory. Visiting my grandfather in a nursing home in Marion, South Dakota. And I think back to visiting him, and I still can remember it wasn't so much the smell in this nursing home of adult diapers or cafeteria food as it was hopelessness. I remember vividly people getting wheeled out into the hallway, and that was their existence. They were, I don't know how long they're going to live, right? It wasn't hospice, so they still had probably some years potentially left. And to be in that moment at the end of your life, you can see the loneliness, you can see the regret. And there's a Jim Rome, I'll summarize the quote, but he said, you can run from pain all you want to, but you're either going to suffer from the pain of discipline, which is momentary, or you will suffer the pain of regret. He said, discipline weighs ounces, regret weighs tons. And I could see it on people. Like, you think about those folks there, you just feel the heaviness of life and regret. And that's like, I ask myself that. So I ask them this question oftentimes in a lot of trainings. Think about end of your life, let's say the last year of your life, and you're looking back 80, 90, whatever it is in people's minds. And imagine being in that moment and asking that question. Say, what type of life would you have to have lived from that moment to today? So the listeners out there, when you're listening to this type of message, what type of life will you have to have lived to look back with satisfaction? Like, yeah, I lived that life, versus, man, I wish I could have. Man, I would have did that. And so that was such a huge driver for me. Bonnie is in a similar boat, his own story, but it's very similar in that way of, like, what type of life will I have to live without regrets? And there's a safe path. Again, I understand psychologically, biologically, I study it extensively, why most people settle for good enough because new is scary, all those various things. But those are the same individuals that will reach the end of their life and look back and woulda, coulda, shoulda. And I want to leave everything on the table. Like my tombstone, people often ask that question, what do you want in your tombstone? And mine's simply, here lies Tamien. He lived with intention. And so I want to be intentional.
It's inspiring.
I want to be
really inspiring.
So that's why this work is something, again, I'll never regret going inside the prisons to do our program. I'll never regret going inside organizations and inspiring people to want more and do more, all the things. And so I can make money in a lot of ways and those type of things, but it's helping people. It's in all of us, really. I mean, again, I'm sure partially why are you doing this show, Jason?
Yeah.
Right?
Well, I get inspired as you talk. Thank you. Okay, Tamien, I put it off long enough. I don't want you to tell the story, but it's an important story to your journey. So please tell the story about walking roofing on the hot summer day.
All about my getting burned.
Yeah. Please tell that
Yeah.
story.
So growing up, my dad owned a construction company. So construction was going to be what I did. I say this now. Fortunately, his business didn't make it because, again, I'm thankful I go home mentally tired versus physically tired. Construction is a real hard thing. So I did that growing up. And so I was 19 years old. Friday night, at the time I was working for a concrete company, and they would hire my dad to come do the sealant work. So his construction company was kind of dwindling, but he would still do sealant work with hot tar and then silicone sealant. And Friday night, I'm trying to hurry up. We're in Yankton, South Dakota, finishing up a job. There's a party to get to, so I'm trying to, hurry up.
I'm grimacing because I know where the story is going in.
Yeah, so the proper way to shut down a kettle, which is that if you ever, for those who don't know, whenever you see sealant work with a hot tar between the cracks, that black tar between the cracks, it's called a kettle. And that kettle, that's about 500 degrees inside the kettle to melt the tar down, and it comes out within the cracks. And so the proper way to shut down the kettle is you put the flow in reverse, then you hold the handle and unscrew the wand. Well, I'm going to hurry, Jason. There's a party to get to. There's fun to be had in Sioux Falls, right? And
the weekend is upon you.
I still got a 90-minute drive to get back home. So I'm trying to get after it. Well, mistake number one, my dad was measuring the jobs. He was down the street. We had this gal would drive for us. She was there. I forgot to put the flow in reverse. And then, again, I would get in trouble by all OSHA standards. But the way I held the wand and unscrewed the handle, because that was faster. It was a faster way of doing that. Well, again, what happens when that last turn and the handle pops open and the flow is not going in reverse, but still coming out. It was hot that day, so I had no shirt on with leather gloves, and all of a sudden 500-degree hot tar sprays onto my chest, stomach, upper armpit over here, a little bit on this arm. And so all of a sudden I get this 3rd-degree burn. I don't remember. I kind of went into shock. The lady that I was with happened, thankfully, I was holding on to. I went into shock. She kicked the wand out of my hand. I remember like brushing it off and jumping over these hedges. There was a couple outside that had a hose, and they put water on it until the ambulance came. And so now you're talking about like literally white meat 3rd-degree burns all over my stomach and my armpit. And so from there, the worst part.
So this is a miserable moment, but even within that moment, there's something extraordinary. There's a couple outside with a hose running.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thankfully, right? So
that's amazing.
Yes. The worst part of the experience, you'd think that was the worst. It's not.
Yeah.
The worst part was having a nursing student trying to apply a catheter.
Oh, God.
That was the worst. That was I remember that more painfully than I do the actual burning of that moment. So spent 10 days in the Avera. Shout out to Avera's burn unit. They did an amazing job. Got skin grafts. I took the skin off the top of my thighs, apply it there. And so, yeah, anyone looks closely, you can see. You can't really see on the camera that much, but I got some nice war wounds of working construction.
What do you learn about life from this whole experience of the accident and the recovery?
For me, it was that was a pivotal moment for me in my life. I was sharing this at CultureCon earlier this year, and
I was listening to your chat.
In hindsight, I recognize like life is the great teacher. People say that in passing, but really looking back, like life is trying to course correct me, right? Oh, having a daughter at 17, still doing knucklehead stuff, still not listening, right? And eventually life is going to just smack the crap out of you and to say, are you listening yet? And that was a very pivotal moment. That was kind of that moment of On the other side of that, naturally, I had to wear this very tight suit for a whole year. I was going through depression, all these things. And so just when people talk about rock bottom, like that was a period, probably a 6 to 9 month window where that was my rock bottom. But that is what allowed me to be open, found God through that process. I found a better path through that process, right? So again, when you get quiet enough and you listen, there's direction, there's higher potential. Again, whatever, for anyone out, for the universe, God, again, for folks to say, listen to that higher call, and there's something saying there's a better way. And what I learned is in those moments, get quiet and ask, what should I be learning right now, rather than why is this happening? Because your brain is Google. If you ask why is this happening, it'll give you all the reasons. You're not worth it. You're not competent, all the BS. Right. But if you ask, what should I be learning right now?
What should I be learning right now? What a good question.
Yeah. So that's what it taught me was get quiet and listen and reflect on what should I be learning right now? What am I in school to learn at this moment?
So another part of your story that fascinates me is you get into the financial service industry and you have a cubicle and things are going along, and then there's opportunities that come up to win vacations. Mm-hmm. Can you please say more about that?
Yeah. So growing up, my sister played club soccer. So the only vacations for me was weekend hotels at a soccer tournament for my sister. So you got Omaha, Apple Valley, Minnesota. We didn't. We went to Denver once because I have family out there, right? So very limited. And kind of what I said earlier.
So you never had seen the ocean?
No ocean, no airplane, anything. And so at the time, so now I'm 21 years old, just looking for a decent job. I got a daughter to raise. I got, so she's 4 years old at this time. So kind of the single dad life. And just looking for.
And at this time, you've recovered from your burn, right?
Yep. So recovered. Went back to school for business management, right? So that was kind of set me on a track to go back to school, because I had taken a gap year after high school. Again, there was no guarantee I would have gone back, but that was definitely sent me down that path. So I find credit card collections, and it was really a moment where growing up, I wasn't great at sports. I really wasn't good at anything, honestly, if I'm not putting myself down. But there was this, I didn't feel I had value. I didn't feel like I was good at anything. And so all of a sudden I stumbled across something. Man, I'm pretty good at this. I can actually do pretty good. And that exposure, not only to being good at something, but then they put these free trips on the line. So I was there about 9 months. And I won a trip. We were supposed to go to Mexico, but at the end of the year, something big happened, obviously, in 2001 in September, where we didn't get everything. Travel was shut down. You had to have passports differently. And so we ended up going to Florida. So we went to Florida, my first time seeing the ocean on a plane. And then all of a sudden I had an addiction to this stuff. So they came back a few months later. They're having another contest. We're going to Mexico. Oh, I'm even more motivated, right? On the phone. Hello, pay your bill, pay your bill, doing credit card collections. And got to see Mexico and then Jamaica and then the Bahamas. And so I got to go on 7 free trips. And this is really for me.
7 free trips.
7 free trips. And something we teach now in one of our trainings is called the principle of exposure, simply stating that in which you're exposed to influences who you become. And so what happened I would say, I think it was like the 4th or 5th trip, we were in St. Kitts, Virgin Islands, and I was with my time girlfriend and my ex-wife having a conversation. I was like, I remember just saying to myself, like, man, I keep winning these trips, but I'm looking around at all these families and people like, what do you have to do for a living to be able to afford this? And at the time, again, traveling to Mexico was foreign to me. So I had no idea how practical it was. To, a few $1,000 you can go, but it wasn't even never thought about it because no one I knew ever did it. And so by that seed getting planted, again, your brain is Google. If you start to ask the questions, it'll help show you and find the answers. And so when I said, what do I have to do to live this life? So I ended up, that set me down a path of finishing out, getting my bachelor's degree. Then I got into management, so on and so forth, and sort of climbing the ladder, because every step, kind of what I was saying, what would I tell that 17-year-old or teenage father? Go as far as your eye can see. And when you get there, you'll be able to see that much further. And so in that moment, when I had those kind of early epiphanies, I didn't aspire for this. I didn't aspire to have my own business. I was just, all I could see was the next promotion or the next trip or the next thing. And when I went there, I was able to see every step of the way, I became a next better version of myself in the process.
So think 3D, as we've talked about, you guys have a big mission and doing a really challenging thing. And doing collections all day seems really challenging. What did you learn? What did you teach yourself to become good at, to become effective and perform well doing collections?
Really, the collections was a focused goal. I was a lazy good collector. It was good enough to be in the top 10%, but I just never optimized my earning potential, if you would. I made good bonuses, monthly bonuses, all those type of things, but I was never that top tier. There's like one guy that was making probably 30 grand more than most people, because he was just dialed in and focused. And so what I learned in that, so every time they had a trip, though, again, it was usually a 4-month contest, whoever, the top people from different departments. And so I knew the numbers, I knew the ethic I had to put into it. And so I got laser focused to achieve my goal. My goal was simple. It was I go on this trip. So what do I have to do to be lasered in? And during those times, I recognized, the power of sprinting towards a goal. And there's another statement by Jim Rohn. Obviously, he's a great motivational speaker and all the stuff he put out there. But he had said, everyone should aspire to become a millionaire, not for the money's sake, for who you have to become in the process. And so throw out the window millionaire, because some people can get an aversion to money, but just that, whatever that version of you is, who you become in the process, that's the part that I can look back and appreciate. That's what I was learning without fully knowing it at the time, and showing and building up my confidence. Because when I ask people, I've seen a study recently that said somewhere in the neighborhood of 85% of people to an impactful degree are lacking in self-esteem or self-confidence. 85%. And I see it. I can see it in people. And then I ask people that question, like, well, how do you build confidence? And they're like, you put the work in. If tomorrow you said, I want to master playing the piano, and you spent 45 minutes a day playing the piano, there will be a period in time, 5 years, whatever, down the road, and you're like, man, I'm really good at this. And so I ask people the question, how many of you are confident in the work that you do today? And then you see a lot of hands go up. I said, were you that way day one? Well, no. How did you get there? You put the work in. So part of the reason that so many people, 85%, are lacking in self-confidence or self-esteem, if you were to ask the average person in hours, how many hours this year, here we are recording this podcast on the 18th of December. So almost the full year's gone by. If you ask most people in hours, how many hours have they spent working on themselves, working to become the better version of them with intention? Most people would be in the single digits in terms of the hours they spent. So it's no wonder 85% of people are lacking in self-confidence or self-esteem, because it's not tethered to the work ethic. So the big takeaway for me in that was, when you set your mind to something and you have a goal. I was never a goal setter. Never had no one in my family. Goal setting was foreign to me. But I learned that was a goal. And then from that, I've been able to build a life of, I set over 100 goals a year at this point now. And so I've learned to expand what I think is possible by way of setting goals and sprinting towards it.
One more question about collections. What did you learn about customer service by being a collector?
Really, everyone's got a story. A lot of people's stories are BS, right? but there's circumstances, and that's the side of it. Get curious. And I think that idea of what I learned as a collector is something we need way more in society. Is Bonnie teaches this in one of his trainings, learning to trade suspicion for curiosity, right? It's getting curious. That person that may be showing up late for work, how do people in the office talk about them? Suspiciously. Ooh, I wonder why John's late, right? Versus, man, I wonder why John's late every day. And getting curious. He may be a single dad with 3 kids and his wife's dealing with cancer, or they're getting a slew of issues, right? You just never know until you're in somebody else's shoes. That's again why I love that you're doing this podcast, right? It's like, and I love the name of it, Awkwardly Awesome. Like, it's saying, like, we all have a voice, we all have a story, and this type of work of just getting empowering people. So I would even say that work early on probably set a foundation for the work that I do with like Justice Impact and some of the other people, because again, they have a story, and sometimes people just need an opportunity. And
we can, as you say this, it occurs to me we can make an assumption about anything in a split second, but by asking questions, we can become curious. Is an assumption true, or is it absolutely BS?
Yeah.
And we can find out by asking questions.
Yeah. Which is a big reason why you saw it at CultureCon, why I was so adamant about that. I was my most vulnerable speech. I have zero problem being vulnerable, but I'm always this mindset. And if people that don't know me kind of would feel like I came that way. And that's why I wanted to unpack my life in that way of like, I come from nothing. I had a teenage dad, gotten arrested before, got burned with hot tar, was depressed, all these different things. And it's like, we all have a story. I don't care who you are, even if you were a trust fund baby, right? Where you came into privilege. That's not a life of just pure gold, right? There's everyone's story has its ups and downs. That's the part of being human. And so, yeah, we can get curious. That's what collections really did for me is allow me to get curious. I had to be curious to be able to help come up with the solution, obviously, and work with people was a big one.
So you and your team, you and Bonnie and your team have been able to create this amazing business, put on CultureCon, which is an amazing event, drawing. How many people do you have?
About 600.
600.
About 600.
And now you own a retreat center called Culture Cove. And one thing you keep coming back to is attention. But Tamien, how are we supposed to stay focused when I can pick up my phone and I have a billion distractions right here in my hand?
Discipline. It's not sexy. It's not a sexy word. People don't, again, for most of our lives, when you think about discipline, that's what I was just telling somebody else. Like, the challenge is, I'm a realist. Like, I'm an optimist, but I'm also a realist. And that is, never in human history has it been easier to be lazy. Again, you can literally, you don't have to leave your house. You can have groceries delivered to your house. All the things. And so the part that is I'm fascinated by is the construction of our brains, right? So again, recognizing the biology of it, because that's telling and the challenge that we're up against, right? So think about when you and I were growing up, right? How often did bored get into your vocabulary? Like, oh, you're bored, go outside and run around. You know what I mean? Like, bored wasn't in our vocabulary to a long degree. Now, again, with my youngest daughter, like, you'll go to the store 5 minutes away. Can I bring my iPad? And what is happening, right, is what this is doing is feeding us that fake dopamine, serotonin. So our brains were never designed to have this level of frequency to dopamine. Like, it's called the expectation theory to a degree. Every time you're scrolling, there's that anticipation. Like, when people get addicted to playing video lottery, or lottery, like the slots, whatever, they're anticipating the potential hit, and all of a sudden their brain hits that high, temporary high of winning a hand or winning a thing, and that's the drug. And so there's a similar, right, when you're scrolling to see something funny or whatever. And so the challenge in that is, again, when you really start to own your currency is your energy, and where you put your focus goes, your energy flows. And so going back to, I heard a motivational speaker a while ago. He said, don't count the cost. And I said, that one I disagree. I love the speaker in a lot of ways. I said, I disagree with that. Count the cost, know what it takes. And I use the analogy, like, did you ever go to like Gigglebees growing up, or like Gigglebees, right? Remember Gigglebees, right? Or for those who are not familiar, Chuck E. Cheese type thing. And I always say, what was the ticket price of the things on the top shelf? Like 10,000 tickets, 15,000 tickets, right? And you got to think about, like, what kid actually got those prices?
Tamien?
No, back then I didn't have the discipline. I was not that one. Any day you're going to get, on a good day, you maybe walk out with a couple hundred tickets, maybe 400 or 500 tickets, right? So even to get 500 tickets, to get something to 10,000, right? That's going to take that many trips to the thing. And so,
and there's always the temptation to spend the tickets on less things.
Yep, the easier low-hanging fruit, right?
Yeah.
And that's what it is for us. The low-hanging fruit is that dopamine. Let me go spend this next 30 minutes scrolling on social media. That gives me the immediate temporary dopamine, serotonin, right, hit. But then I'm putting off my dreams. I'm putting off my goals. Because your goals, the things that you really want, has an energetic cost. And so if you were to think about your attention in terms of those tickets that you got, if you want to get that prize quicker, you have to count the cost. What is the energetic cost to having a great relationship? What is the energetic cost of being the healthiest version of yourself? What is the energetic cost of getting that promotion? And so when you really get honest about how much it really takes in that space, is why I use this poster in the background. This was actually from, it says, "How dare you not be great?" This was the theme from CultureCon year 1. And in the pictures, I got Muhammad Ali, Oprah, Obama, I got Michael Jordan, I got all these greats. And I sit in that, I remind myself, man, what did they have to go through? What did they have to sacrifice in order to get the things that they say that they wanted in life?
Should we still can't quite see it? Oh.
How dare you not be great? So you see some of those folks you got.
And the people are within the words.
Within the words, yep. So you got some folks, every word has a different picture behind it. And so I think about that of greatness is available to every single person. And that's where defining what do you want in life? What is it that you really want? And so to me is everyone has the ability, right, to choose whatever life you want. That's the beauty of living in this free country. But most people aren't choosing. They're having their life chosen for them by the marketers. I always say, if you don't have a plan for your time, TikTok does, Instagram does, Netflix does, and they're getting paid very well off it. And so if your dreams has a cost, your ambitions in the life that you really want, that life that's awaiting for all of us has a cost. And so I'm aware I don't get on social media a whole lot. I limit a lot of things. I use technology to limit my technology, how much time I can spend on this. And so I predetermine the things that I'm doing because, again, I'm back to how you do it, discipline. Discipline is the bridge between where you are and where you want to go.
Please say more about using technology to limit your technology.
Yeah. So, I mean, for me, you set limits, right? You have the limits on there. I have a reminder that pops up a few different times a day just to remind you where are you at in the day. If your phone's with you all of the time, my alarm clock, I use it's called a sleep and alarm app. You can basically use any YouTube video as your alarm, and I put that out in my living or my kitchen because I have to actually get myself out of bed to go. I don't even turn it off. I just put my earbuds in because I have a motivational video playing at 4 a.m. when I wake up boom, and I just got to put my earbuds in, and now I'm conditioning myself.
So your alarm clock is literally a motivational video?
Yep. So I'm listening
Wow.
from the moment when I get woken up by, so they say you want one of the golden ways of changing your life. This is probably a whole nother deep segment in it, but when you think about 60,000 thoughts a day, that's what the average person has. They say 90 to 95% of our life is controlled at the subconscious level. Okay, even if you can grasp that, how do you start to get to your subconscious? Because you can't just choose what goes in your subconscious. I can choose consciously right now, but subconscious, you have to impress it upon your subconscious. And so the two most important time periods of your day to impress your subconscious is the 5 minutes when you go to sleep and the 5 minutes when you first wake up, because your brain is in a similar wave state as a 0 to 6 year old child when they're highly impressionable. And so what you're thinking about in those moments are so important. So how are you conditioning your subconscious or reconditioning your belief system to align with your dreams, aspirations, and hopes?
Wow. So if someone listening right now is like thinking, I'm an employee in a work environment that I just don't enjoy. But what can I do? I'm just an employee. What would you say to that person?
Leadership IOU. So when you think about an IOU, it's a slip that you owe somebody, right? So IOU is lead in, lead out, then lead up. And back to that, what I said at the beginning of the show, you cannot and you will not be able to live your best life possible independent of an ideal workplace culture. Ideal, not perfect. Ideal is about progress. Well, part of that progress has to do with you. You are part of the culture. Now,
Part of that progress has to do with you.
Yes. And when people take employee engagement surveys, right, we always say, again, every organization should be doing employee engagement surveys, even though a lot aren't. It's the pulse of where the company is at. Well, when people are taking the employee engagement survey, they often rate what they think the macro culture is. So let's say you're in an organization of 1,000 people and they say, well, the culture, and you're taking your score. When the reality is your micro culture, it's when you think of 1 to 1,000, what can I really do? Well, your day-to-day experience, the people you actually engage with on a daily basis is maybe a couple dozen people. So when you really break that down to I'm 1 of 12, 1 of 24, your impact and influence on that micro culture is huge. And of which now that number is much higher in how you influence. And so again, leading in, what are you doing to invest into you to make yourself better? How do you become a better person that comes in with positivity every day? How are you working on your communication to get better? There's always skills to be working on. So when you start with leading in, then leading out or leading others, we always define it, as I said earlier, leadership is influence. So how could I start to influence maybe a couple of my coworkers that we maybe have a relationship with and say, like, how does it feel when we go home and when the environment's good and it's healthy compared to one of those bad days, driveway days, and you recognize, man, that's a big shift in how you go home every day, of which when you start to take ownership, I am a part of the progress or the stagnicity, if you would, of staying in the exact same culture. Now you start to say, locking arms with other people to say, we're not fighting just to make this company better. I'm fighting to make my life better. Because if my micro culture gets better, I go home better. So this isn't about company XYZ. This is about impacting and what I can control and what I can influence, making my micro culture as good as it possibly can, because that's what I take home to my family, way beyond just the paycheck that goes into my bank account every couple of weeks. And when you start to do that, so I always tell folks, do that measurably for 6 months before you bring it to your boss, the CEO. Do that for 6 months. And you start to say, if you committed to it and start to say, I'm starting to see a shift, and people start to see the energy change in the environment because of a decision that you made. Now bring this to your leadership to say, we're only doing this, me and James and Sarah, the three of us got together and said, we want to influence this, and this is what's going, look at our numbers, the things are better, because on that side of it, better business is always going to happen. And when you bring that to your leadership team, and if they're saying, awesome. How can we expand this? You're in the right place, right? It's about progress. If you're in a lot of places, also have this other side of the experience. Oh, that's cute. Get back to work. They're telling you everything you need to know about that relationship. And so no different than a romantic relationship. How long would you stay in a relationship if they made it very apparent they don't care about your well-being? And so if a business doesn't care about your well-being, why would you stick around? And that's why I would say, don't jump out, hear this for the first time, going to your boss tomorrow and say, we need to make it better. Show them. You teach through the clarity of your example. Most people don't know what it looks like because we've never seen it. Work was just work and you just dealt with it. So show them what's possible in a 6-month window of time. And if they're still not for that, those skills are universal, and you'll find other places that want employees that are ready to make the culture better, because the skills you can teach, right? The other stuff has to really be worked on differently.
I love that. That was both very concrete and very inspiring at the same time.
Yeah.
So just a few more quick things. I've been in that meeting before where I thought I had good ideas, but and like no one wants to hear it, and got insecure. What would you say to people in a workplace about the importance of them speaking up?
I think to your point, like we all have ideas, and it's most of our life we haven't had the affirmations or confirmations that we needed to like be able to speak up. So when people do and it gets shot down, you see why most people just take their hands off the steering wheel and let it just happen to them. To me, it's always important to keep those things flowing, but always have a body of evidence of what you can control and what you can influence. Because when you're doing that, so I'll take, for instance, we're doing a lot of stuff in our community, and we've had this Leaders of Tomorrow program since 2018. It's been a good idea since day one. And yet I'm constantly having to go out and raise money and do the things to convince other people that if we don't, we're going to have issues with crime. We're going to have issues with all these different impediments that are on the horizon. And so I get the frustration. Believe me, like I've been frustrated till I'm blue in the face. But again, back to what I know about when studying out the lives of the people on this poster, how many times do you think they got told no? How many times, again, Oprah Winfrey, she was fired from her job because they said, you don't have a future on television. She was a news anchor. And it's Oprah, right? But if she would have listened to that, she would have just, well, maybe not. And she would have went and did something else. But that's just one thing I'm learning from, I would call it some mentors here locally, your Dana Dykehouses, people like that persistent patience is huge. And, hearing his stories of how, if it really matters to you, he was sharing with me, 1984, he was at him and a couple of the guys started having conversations about how to improve the football program at SDSU. 1984. And people see his name on the building, all those different things. But those conversations happen well in advance before people see the product. And so most people want people to have the same passion and enthusiasm as you do. It's rare it's going to happen up front. If it really matters to you, stick to it, but also make sure that it's coupled with other things where you can see momentum to keep your confidence up and see momentum in your life. But some things are going to take long. I mean, it's going to take longer and probably take more money than you ever thought it would in almost every case. So stay at it if you're really passionate about it.
Thank you. I ask all my guests this question. Doing my imperfect best means going for what I want for my life and for my community, going for that best. And then when imperfections, mistakes come up, instead of using them as a reason to stop, I use them to learn from and keep moving forward. What does doing your imperfect best mean to you, Tamien?
Really good question. I actually been noodling on this because I would say probably 20 to 40% of society deals with perfectionism to a large degree. And that was my world, right? And I can trace it back probably where it came from. But what I've learned in that is learning to optimize the moment. And so when I look at my day, like, what does a perfect day really look like? Now I measured it out. I planned my days. I got this planner. So I got the step-by-step playbook of my day. So that's what an ideal day will look like. But then there's going to be curveballs that get thrown your way. Are you optimizing the moment? And so if something unexpected comes up, like when I get off this podcast, I could have one of my team members coming in and, hey, I got this client issue. Wasn't expecting to deal with that, but all right. One deep breath, given all the options right now, what is the best next right move in this moment? How do I optimize this moment, this day? Because again, the circumstances in life are constantly shifting, but the one through line to that, I would say, coupled with optimization, is striving for excellence. And excellence is something that you can always reach for. Again, did I give excellence in that? In preparing to be on this podcast, right? Again, I didn't just pop on, right? I wanted to make sure that I was mindful and in a right mind state so I could come and bring my best to this moment. And so if I know if over a long haul that imperfect, how do you phrase it? Imperfect perfection?
Yeah, doing our imperfect best.
Imperfect best, yeah. So that's the side of it of we're human. We need grace, but the measurable side of it is where you'll get the evidence that if I keep going at it, I have a measurable difference a week apart, a month apart, 3 months apart. You'll be able to see progress. And that's where, again, if I aim to optimize my days, my weeks, my months, my life, I'll see progress. And that really is the key of life for me, is progress, not perfection.
Thank you so much, Tamien, for bringing your A game, for inspiring us, for giving us not just abstract comments to abstract concepts to think about, but practical things we can do. Thanks so much for all you do for Think 3D in your community.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This was amazing. This was actually one of the best podcasts I've been on, Jason. You did an amazing job. So kudos to you, man. Keep up the word. This is really, really thoughtful questions, not your run-of-the-mill stuff. So I really enjoyed myself today.
Good.